EdTech panel discussion with a very quick introduction of the panelists today, whom we have here. We have Krishna, who's IIT Kanpur 1999 graduate, right? He started Simply Learn quite a few years back. He has had an interesting journey scaling Simply Learn from India, US, and so many international markets. Would be
I just want to clarify, Vipin, that I am 99 dropout. I didn't complete IIT.
Oh, that would be even more interesting to hear then. So great to have you here, Krishna. We have Ashish, who's batch of 2002 IIT Kanpur. Ashish, I don't know how many people in the audience might have even known Ashish as the CEO of Resonance Education Kota earlier. Ashish was heading the entire Resonance business there and has in the last 1 year joined Byju's, where he's again heading the IIT JEE and the competitive test preparation space for Byju's. It's under his leadership now that Byju's is expanding so fast and doing a couple of very interesting acquisitions. So have a very interesting sort of thought process that we're looking forward from listening from him. Last but not the least, we also have Karan here with us, who's running an interesting startup, Pariksha. They are doing EdTech space for competitive tests and test preparation, and that too in vernacular languages. Something similar to what I was doing at Online Theory, my previous startup. Again, would be great to have this interesting cross-section of speakers talk to us and share their journeys of how they started up. Thanks, everyone. I'll now formally sort of request everybody to do a quick introduction over one minute each. Starting with Krishna first, maybe you can just sort of quickly tell Krishna about your journey of how you started Simply Learn and what it does right now. Sure. Just over 2 minutes.
Sure. Thanks, Vipin, and nice to meet you, Ashish and Karan. Look forward to speaking in the panel. So, quick background about Simply Learn. See, this is a business that I didn't start by a lot of planning. I was kind of in between jobs. So in 2007, I sold my last company that was a software product company for banking industry. And I was trying to figure it out what should I do next in my career. So this was a blog that I used to run mainly for my own learning. I wanted to learn internet because internet was slated to become very big, and it actually eventually became so big. If you think about 2007, 2008 time frame, nobody thought that it will become so integral part of our lives. So started blogging, and that got a lot of interest. A lot of people started following my blog. And then one thing led to another thing, and it became an online skilling business. So in 2010, it became a company. In 2010, there was no EdTech, right? So our initial challenge was just communicating that this is also a way of learning, right? And today we provide digital skills training, and majority of our business is outside India. I think it's something that not very many people know. As much as 65 to 70% of Simply Learn customers and revenue comes from outside India. And of course, we are also one of the largest player in India when it comes to digital skills training. We'll stop here.
Sure. Thanks for this, Krishna. Ashish, you want to go next?
My journey is not an entrepreneur journey, but it is not less than an entrepreneur journey because I have done all the bootstrapping done, what is being required. I joined Resonance 2 decades back as one of the first academic employees of that organization. Started my career as a faculty, then taught physics for a decade, then started moving into the management, entrepreneur, business development, business strategy, and then raising the stairs in that and leading the organization for 5 years. We are raising capital, deploying capital, seeing the exit and the entry of various investors in the whole process itself. And a year and a half back, then moved from the pure offline coaching institute, which was earlier known as Coaching Institute, and then seeing that being known as the organizational or the education organizations. Because when after my graduation from IIT Kanpur, I joined Resonance, then people used to know it as a tuition center. And when I left Resonance, then people used to know it as a big organization. Have catered something around 1 lakh students in physically classroom itself, and something around 500,000 lakh students in various distance learning modes. Then moved into the EdTech altogether 1.5 years back, seeing various amount of interest at various levels, and that's the whole journey it is. And here also the journey is quite interesting, from starting from the scratch for creating the whole division of the test prep, then going into the one of the biggest acquisitions in the whole education industry itself. So the journey is quite interesting, and seeing the landscape would change within next few couple of years more. And seeing the whole journey from last 2 decades, the journey has been pretty interesting. It's a ride which has been not imagined by anyone who can.
Yeah. I'm sure this is going to be a very, very fun session in terms of hearing your stories, because both of you at least have been running the startup for such a long time that you would definitely talk of it, saying, "Hey, hamare zamane mein this kind of thing happened." I'm sure those kind of things will happen. Karan, sorry, but introducing you now. So request you to just quickly tell everybody about what your business is and your journey in brief.
So thank you, Vipin. Hi, Krishna. Hi, Ashish. So my journey is very different from Krishna and Ashish's journey. I'm a soldier's son, and I fell in love with a girl here in Pune, and I wanted to stay back in Pune. So I told my father that I don't want to join services. I want to prepare for civil services. My father was kind enough to allow me, but preparing for civil services was an excuse to stay back in Pune. You know, when you are 22, 23, when you fall in love, you think the entire world is here only. So, so I thought, since he has allowed me to pursue my dream, so-called dream, why don't I seriously do something about it? And then I started looking for notes at that time. And unfortunately, here in Pune, you would hardly find good books. I'm talking about 2003, 2004. I'm facing this problem. I'm sure there will be many other who will be facing this problem. So as Krishna rightly said, way back in 2010 there was no EdTech, and way back in 2003 or 4 there was absolutely nothing called EdTech. So I thought there were sites like Gyan.com and all of these. So I thought, what if there is a website which has past year paper of almost all the exams held in our country? What if there's a website where you can just come and give mock tests? What if there is a website where you could just get the information that to be eligible for this exam, this is what is required. A website which could also provide you some kind of information in terms of when the notification is out, what is the last day to fill up the forms. So that was the basic idea. Me coming from a non-technology background had a tough journey. A friend of mine recommended that you should get a website done by some, at that time there were like hundreds and thousands of web development companies across Pune. Me being novice, I was recommended to a close friend of his. And Vipin, probably today you'll laugh at it. When I first talked to the CEO of that website development company, he said, "In what language do you want your website?" I said, "I want that in English. I've seen all the websites in English." So I have a law and a management background now. At that time, just a rookie law graduate. So that was the level of my ignorance. Started with that. The name of the venture was Learning Mantra. We were able to attract some investment. I don't know if I could call it the first, EdTech company of our country. But way back in 2002, 2003, 2004, there was no other company that was kind of offering these services. So that was my first encounter with the so-called EdTech. Pariksha's journey started way back in 2012 when I met my co-founders at IIM Ahmedabad. So I was invited by IIM Ahmedabad to judge their annual business plan competition called Master Plan. And that's where I met Utkarsh, and it was kind of love at first sight. Utkarsh was still studying at IIT Kanpur. So even he had been through this painful process of preparing for JEE. So we clicked, and that's how the journey started. We formally incorporated the company in 2015. And today I'm very happy and proud to say that we are India's largest vernacular test prep company. We cater to almost 40 lakh students across 13 states in 7 different languages. And our primary focus is Bharat, tier 2, tier 3. So this is brief journey. We've raised a couple of $1 million in investment. I think we are taking EdTech where it is needed the most. Thank you so much.
Great. This is a very, very interesting panel, clearly, right? So we have all the 3 founders who've been at it for cumulatively almost like 45 years now, if not more, right? And a wealth of experience out there. So I'll start with the basic question, right? So there is one company in the panel which is clearly a Bharat company. There is another one which is which started off as a Bharat company. Ashish, you are leading it right now, and now we hear of Byju's taking the India model also to other countries. And Krishna, I think it's the other way around for you a lot in many ways, because you were concentrating a lot on the international markets and have now sort of also started looking more deeply on India. So I'll start with a very open-ended question for 3 of you. In the next 10 minutes, maybe I'll just sort of try to understand your insights on this. Where do you see the opportunity more? Is it develop in India and sell outside India in the edtech space, or is it more like still develop in India and cater to India? Where do you see the opportunities? It's also linked to your business model, of course, but where are you individually pursuing your strategies?
Yeah, so Vipin, I'll go first. See, I strongly believe that EdTech is the next big export from India. So if you look at IT services industries, the likes of TCS, Infosys, Wipro, if you do any slice and dice of that industry, if you look at the companies that are $1 billion plus, $10 billion plus, $100 million plus, $50 million plus, and if you start ranking companies globally, most of the top rank will be like taken by Indian companies. Now, as you know, TCS is today's world's most valued IT services company, surpassing Accentures, likes of the Accentures and IBM's also, right? So I clearly see that that moment is for Indian EdTech. See, there is no reason why Bajul can't do what they've done successfully in India globally, right? The model works, the product works, and of course, we have huge number of teachers in our country. Math is math, whether you learn in the US or you learn in Mexico. So I think we are suddenly sitting. So some of those things that work for IT, that Java is Java everywhere. I think similar is applicable in IT, in EdTech also, and it's happening. So this is about K-12, which is very easily understandable, like all of the kids that go to schools. If you look at our industry, right, higher education, right, see, for a long time, we focused on international because there was no market in India. When I started, when I thought that it will become when I started getting interest, I never wanted my business to be built around investors. This thought that, okay, as long as I have money, I can run the business. The moment there is supply of money is cut, then I'm out of business. And that thought itself was a very strange thought for me. Because the previous company also, I pretty much started in my apartment and sold it in 50 crore. There was no investor. Because BCM exited 50 crore in 2007 and I was in a very good, comfortable position. So never in my dreams, I thought that, okay, I'll raise investor and then the business will grow. The previous startup I started in 99, 2000, just after IIT. So that time there was no concept of VC industry. We had handful of VC investors, and now it's obviously for good that it has such a big industry got built in. So I started focusing on where their users were. Users were ready to pay outside India. So that's how Simplilearn started focusing in US and other markets because there are more take-ups of our product. But for a long time we struggled with this model that who are we in US? It's such a huge market, right? Nobody knows you. You need to spend money to create a market. But now suddenly in our business also the model has changed. Now, if you go to a Simplilearn website and you want to take a cloud course or you want to take a cybersecurity course or a data science course, it comes with credibility of the top universities in those regions. So you can take an MIT, world's #1 tech institution in the world. You can take a cybersecurity MIT course on Simplilearn platform. You can take a cloud program with Caltech. Again, Caltech is again #1 or #2 globally in all kinds of when it comes to tech institution ranking. You can take a Purdue course. Like in India, in fact, last month we announced our first program with IIT Kanpur. So you can take if any of you want to learn blockchain, there is IIT Kanpur blockchain program on Simplilearn. So that has suddenly like taken away of the brand challenge that we had, and that has exploded that market in a big way. And not only us, there are other competitors of Simplilearn who are like Indian companies doing extremely well in US. Because now I don't have to sell my program as Simplilearn program. I sell it as a Purdue program or an IBM program or a Caltech program and so on. And if you look at the economics works so well because 90% of my cost is sitting in India. I'm only spending the required 10% there. So local instructors wherever required, local promotion wherever required, but primarily controlling from India. I don't see how global companies will win us against this model. And we have the required global exposure also. So if you go to Simplilearn website today, and if you are based in US, there is no way that you can get to know there's an Indian company. My CMO Mark Moran sits in US, and he has a team in US, but his 70-member team is sitting in India. So all practical purposes, an American company catering to American audience, partnering with American universities and American corporates, and seen as a local company. So we and many others are also doing the same model. So I am very, very convinced that it's the next big industry that will bring billions of dollars to our country and help in our foreign exchange challenges that we always face as a country.
So just a very small related question, Krishna. Ashish, I know you are there. So just very small question. So a big chunk of your revenue right now, Krishna, comes from US markets and development happens in India. Is that how it works?
Also, a big chunk, like 50% of my revenue comes from US, 50% from India, and other 20% comes from other countries like UK, Australia. Put all other English-speaking countries together because we cater only to English-speaking audience today. Sure. And if you look at an EdTech, there are various cost elements, right? One of the big cost element is technology. Because technology hiring in the current time is the toughest thing. It was never so hard to hire technology talent. Entire technology team sits out of India. The content development has various parts, right? The subject matter expertise is just one part, but producing the content so that the content can be consumed by the audience and it is designed for an internet kind of delivery, all that is done from India. The product management team that decides what product to develop, done in India. The partnership team, majority of the team is just in India, that does the lead generation. The final closing team is only in US. The only part that we do in US is the US English part, because if you Indian writes US English, it will be pretty become
it's very different.
You guys writing US English, so it resonates to the local audience and such kind of things. Wherever we know that native context is important, we just do that part there.
Talking of resonance, so Ashish, resonance ka batao, like resonance and now Byju's. So what has been your thought process internally now?
The thought process which Krishna has told, I simply resonate with Krishna on this thought process. Anything which can get succeeded in India can be used outside India also. India has so much dividend distribution or the geographic distribution. If you are able to conquer that, if you are able to overcome that, you can use that knowledge, you can use that system, you can use that process across the globe anywhere. And especially in the test prep itself, the Indian test prep market is so tough. If you are able to crack into it using an EdTech or a hybrid model, then you can replicate exactly the same across the globe.
Got it. So you are looking at test prep specifically for your business vertical. So you would be looking at, because in America, obviously JEE doesn't exist. So over there it's SAT and GRE, etc. So you will be focusing on SAT and GRE for the US markets.
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting.
SAT, OCT, GRE, GMAT.
Got it. Very interesting. And Karan, for yourself, because you are targeting Bharat, so Bharat, do you see replication of that in other countries, or your focus still will remain Bharat for a long time?
So first, as I agree with both Ashish and Krishna. I think if you look at the EdTech market opportunity in India, probably this is the only sector where we can compare the US and the Indian market dollar to dollar. Perhaps we'll be bigger than them in coming some time. Second is, I think as Ashish rightly said, that anything that succeeds here in at least in EdTech, we have a great use case for that overseas also. So for instance, if you look at Pariksha, we are very closely looking at the Bangladesh market, which is a very similar market because we started our services in West Bengal. So the Bangladeshi Bengali and the West Bengal Bengali is almost similar. So if you're not a local guide, it'll be very difficult for you to differentiate between the two. Demography is almost similar. Examination system, recruitment process is all same because a couple of decades ago we were just a one country, right?
Yep.
So opportunities within India, whether we look at Bharat or whether we look at India, is huge. I'm of the view that within India probably we can have 30 to 40 unicorns just in EdTech. Remember, Vipin, all of us on this panel, we are operating in a very unregulated environment, right? In India, unregulated and perhaps unorganized, if I could say that. Large place like Byju's and other large players, they are trying to organize this market. But primarily, we are in an unregulated and unorganized market. Imagine a scenario when education is privatized in India. So I'm of the view that number of universities and colleges in India will go down, but the quality of education and the affordability of education will go up. Now, just to add to what Krishna said, I'm in really love with his business model, and I think we follow a similar model where we also try to leverage on a partner coaching institute. So I think all of us have learned from Coursera, where Coursera would go and partner with Harvards and Stanfords of the world. From partnership, they would get a great content, proven teaching pedagogy, and they'll be able to leverage on the name of Stanford and Harvard. In our case, we do the same thing. We identify the most leading, the most aspirational coaching institute for state government job exams in every state, and for content, and for knowledge, and for teaching pedagogy, we go and partner with them. So we leverage on their brand name, we leverage on their market insight and the insight of the examination. So I think within India and outside India, the opportunity is huge.
Karan, so very interestingly, I used to run a company called Online Taiyari earlier. You might have heard of it. It was acquired by Reliance last year. Was in a similar space. Personally, we were also doing the same kind of stuff. And we started running into issues. So at our peak, when we were acquired somewhere around that time, we were doing around 5 lakh unique users a day, same space, test preparation, etc. Also, over a period of time, started running into issues with the publishers who started realizing that we are sort of creating notes for books that these guys have published. How are you addressing that, Karan? I'll start with you.
So, just a slight context. I think I'm very happy and proud to say that Pariksha is we have been in this market before, and there have been like many players in the Bharat market before. But perhaps the one thing that we did right was that we took some pain to really understand this market. What other players were doing was that they were trying to impose India business model in Bharat. Bharat is a very, very different market. In fact, if I could say, I would say we have 37 different markets, in our country. UP East and UP West are very, very different, and you would understand the difference only when you go deep in this market. So I was a soldier's son, and everybody was coming from South, was called Madrasi. Okay, फौज में सब लोग ये कहाँ से, ये मद्रास से. But Kerala and Tamil Nadu, they are totally different markets, very, very different market. So what we did was that we knew that on our own it will be very difficult to conquer this market. Okay. First is it is very difficult to acquire the knowledge and expertise, let's say of Tamil Nadu Police Constable exam sitting here in Pune. Okay, even somehow if we acquire the knowledge, then there will be a huge question mark on the credibility of the content. Just say if we build that content on our own. Remember, there are no HC Vermas in Bharat, right? There are no HC Vermas in Bharat. So we thought we learned a great deal from Netflix and Coursera. We saw that both these companies they were able to make a dent by partnering. They did not do content on their own at the initial stages, right? Because the expertise was very, very less. So we thought there are hundreds and thousands of well-known coaching institutes who've been doing this business for decades, right? So far, they are only catering to 10% of the market, because if you look at Bharat, only the affluent ones are able to go to a coaching institute. The remaining 90% are preparing on their own at home. And how are they preparing? They go to these bookstores, they buy these books, they come back to their villages and they prepare on their own. So we thought, let's take a business model to these coaching institutes where we give them access to a larger market, the remaining 90% market, just the way probably Netflix did for these big studios, or maybe Coursera did for Stanfords and Harvards of the world, right? So it was a very collaborative business model where we were not competing with any player. So perhaps it has happened for the first time that an edtech company, an online edtech company, was not competing with offline players, but it was collaborating with them. It was empowering them with the technology. So today we have a lot of companies which are in the SaaS domain, but I think we did it long time back. Yeah. And the only way that we are able to dominate this market is by partnership, where the top-notch content is being made available to our users with a lot of credibility. And the beauty is that we do not have a fixed monthly cost.
Sure. So just to get to understand this, so you are partnering and distributing content from coaching centers, but not notes or photocopied material of the books which are, say, published by McGraw-Hill, Wiley's, and the book publishers of the world, right?
So we have a hybrid content strategy. Let's say all textual content, whether it is mock test or whether it is practice content, to some extent even notes, they are own IP. For videos and live streaming classes, we go and partner with the coaching institutes, right? It's on a revenue share basis that we do with them. Sure. We have not yet partnered with any of these book publishers so far. So it's a kind of a thing where they go and partner with Stanford. In our case, we go and partner with Kautalyas and Chanakyas of the world.
Yeah, yeah. Ashish, in your case, given that you are in the test prep space, and obviously you were leading Resonance, so people, especially since there are so many people from IIT, and these guys, at least most of the guys who are now sitting in IIT might have most likely come through an offline coaching center kind of an experience. So a lot of people in this room at least might not be very aware or comfortable with the online mode of education for an exam which is as tough an IIT exam. How are you seeing that change or evolve? Are people getting comfortable, or what are your thoughts there?
There are two categories to it. If we divide the whole market segment, there are two categories. One are the students who are the cream or the de la cream of the students. And second is the majority of the students. The cream and the de la cream of the students, I think so, in the present scenario, is not very, very satisfied with the EdTech. But over a period of time, when the EdTech would evolve and we will be able to cater those because of the interactivity or the connectivity issues or various other issues. But majority of the mass is now accepting EdTech fully. First of all, the people who are sitting here in the forum discussing the things, or in the speakers, or in the attending the session, these are those people who have passed way back. So this is a new generation. Learning of one generation is by default for another generation. The average IQ level grows, the comfort level grows. And what now we used to see is that our kids are very much comfortable with the gadgets as compared to what we are still comfortable with. So the coming generation is very, very comfortable with EdTech. It's the barrier which is in our mindset. It's not the barrier in the mindset of the consumers at present. They are comfortable. All what they need is quality delivery. All what they need is quality services. All what they need. Now the consumer behavior is they need everything on a call. Now they need everything on a click of a button. If we are able to provide that and resolve those issues, then there is no challenge there. The challenge is in our mindset, not in the consumer's mindset at all. So the behavior has changed, the nature, the way consumers have changed, the EdTech has evolved fully. And test prep being the toughest part to crack because it's a result game. It's a zero sum game. Somebody is getting the results or somebody is losing the result. So it is a tough part on that. So here, if we are able to crack that, then we are going to win the market share. That's for sure.
And for you, Krishna, since you are in a different space, so your learning outcomes for you on your platform are not linked to a test, unlike Karan and Ashish's thing. Because out here, I think it's more about personal development, skill development. How are you motivating people? How are people more self-motivated right now? And what is the catch in order to get more and more customers in that sense for you?
Sure. So in our case also, there is a very clear outcome that people look at when they are signing up for our programs. As you can see, there are a lot of new digital companies that are getting built, and they require a kind of talent, but they require a different kind of talent. And a lot of traditional companies also want to become digital. So what it has created is a huge demand-supply gap when it comes to digital skills, right? Like when I talk about digital skills, I'm talking about skills like data science, analytics, cybersecurity, Scrum Master, DevOps, like insane world. If you know, and I'm sure you are tracking hiring technology talent, there is no limit, right? Like people who are getting maybe paid 20-30 lakhs, that has moved to 60-70 lakhs today in a matter of years, right?
Yes.
You can see such kind of things happening in their peer circle, right? They see their classmates getting that kind of growth. They see their ex-colleagues getting that kind of growth. There's a huge demand supply gap. That's what drives people to look for this kind of courses. So there are different takers. Like in Simple Learn platform, we primarily cater to people to help them get their second or third job. We have very limited students who come to Simple Learn because they want to get their first job. 99% of our learners are working professionals. They have got into an industry. They want to make a lateral shift. So people who are programmers, they want to become machine learning engineers. People who have just started basic analytics, they want to become data scientists. So that kind of motivation, like blockchain. Suddenly we see a lot of interest in blockchain because people see that that's another big area that will open up. So that's the motivation. And most of them, they get the required like growth because our courses are like pretty expensive. Like average price will be about 50,000. So anybody who's spending their own 50,000 to take up a program, the motivation to complete is already there. And since our model is not just video learning, our model is live classes and 24/7 support, hands-on project, we provide all the ecosystem for people to complete it, right? So and we have also do all kinds of survey that where were you before starting a program, what happened 6 months after completing a program. You see majority of people end up switching their job or changing their designation within the 6 months time period they complete the program.
Very interesting. Krishna, so since you already mentioned that you have offline contact centers, etc., is there some bit of temptation also to have a more permanent kind of, I would say, a college or mini college kind of setup for you, or you want the offline part restricted only to doing the, I would say, supplemental part of training?
So I want to clarify, we don't have any offline centers, zero. Our model is 100% online. In 2015 we had. In 2015, we closed all our offline centers. So last 5-6 years, we have zero offline centers. So what we did was that what we used to do in offline was that in-person class used to happen in offline. And online was primarily the video content and support.
Yes.
So we replaced that offline teaching to online teaching. So if you go to Simple Learn, you can, like this kind of model. One instructor, one teaching assistant, and another 50 students in a class.
Got it. Fair enough. But is there, so good that you sort of brought it up, but is there now, given that you've already reached a significant scale in terms of operations and revenues, etc., Is there now a reverse temptation to sort of go back, given that mass of number of users might be even higher if you sort of open a physical center?
So Bipin, in my business, I don't see that because we are catering to digital skills, right? Anybody who's
Okay.
if your entire life is going to be in front of a desktop or some kind of machine, so better learn, do everything, get comfortable with that model. And
Okay.
most of the digital skills, you actually do it on a cloud. So in our learning model, we provide a hands-on sandbox where whatever you learn, you also try. So we can pretty much offer that for every skill that we train on Simplilearn platform, because anything related to digital is available on cloud, right? So we don't see a model of we going offline. See, any new variable that you add to your business, it adds to complexity. So
Yes.
I would rather like to remove something than add something. Like as itself, my business is very complex because I have paying customer from 202 countries.
Yeah. Wow.
It's very difficult to optimize, right? So we just look at our business as US and India business. So if I start looking at maybe like my third, fourth, and fifth country,
Yeah.
I'm sure just by focusing there, that those businesses can become big, right? But you don't have so much resources to do that.
Makes sense. Ashish, since you sort of led the acquisition for Akash, and Akash has largely so far only been an offline business, what are your thoughts there? Do you think Akash will now also, Byju's will, in sense, Byju's, Akash, whatever, I don't know the brand name, will become a hybrid offline-online thing? Or do you foresee in the next 5 years Akash also completely merging and becoming online, just like Krishna has been mentioning so far?
We see it as a 3-pillar game altogether, or the 3 streams which will develop and survive in the country in the test prep. One would be the pure offline space. You can't end up the offline space fully, and you can't move on to edtech space, because there would definitely be a cult of students or a culture of the students who will definitely go to a classroom, and they need a classroom coaching where the discipline is most required and discipline is most provided. It's a high touch game. It's a high touch model in which the student will interact with the faculty on a daily basis, ask the doubts on a daily basis, type of a thing. The second thing, which is far more expandable, which we are imagining can grow abruptly in this country, is the hybrid model. In the hybrid model, there will be offline centers, but the teaching would be online with the discipline required for a student. Because the test prep in Akash, what we are looking for is a K-12 type of a test prep. In K-12 type of a test prep, the students are still young. So they need disciplined structure. They can't study on their own. You can't expect even a 11th or a 12th class student that the student can complete the curriculum within a stipulated time. And we all have gone through the JEE rigor, so we know that the curriculum is so huge, so mammoth, that to complete it in a stipulated time and then revise and compete is tough enough. So they need a structure around it. So this will be for those students where the quality of the faculties is tough to deliver, where the curriculum is not easy to deliver. So there, this hybrid model would evolve. And the third model would be the online model. We imagine hybrid will dominate among all the 3. The second one would be the online. The offline will be small enough, but there would definitely be a space for at least 15-20 centers across the country for an offline space.
Got it. And Karan, in your case, so far, it's largely almost I would say 90-95% of this Sarkari government job test preparation space is largely offline, has been offline. Of course, people have been trying to disrupt that particular space, but it's tough. Do you have this temptation of collaborating? I know you've mentioned that you've collaborated with all these local regional champions who are the coaching center owners. Do you see your Pariksha coming out as a separate brand altogether, or do you want to just sort of be the collaborator with the existing brands who are running in their regions?
So I think the Bharat market has changed considerably. One is that slowly exams have started transitioning online. For instance, if I have to give you an example, Madhya Pradesh has completely gone online.
Yep.
So a huge scam called Vyapam scam. I'm sure all of you would have. Right? So after that, to bring in transparency and to bring in more accountability, the state adopted online examination. And if you look at other states, I think almost 40% of all the state government job exams have transitioned online. And Vipin, I am a strong believer that in next 2 years, there will be no exam, 2 to 3 years, there will be no exam in our country which will be held offline. Now, case here being, let's look at Indian Railways exam. So Indian Railway conducted probably the world's largest exam where 2.3 lakh applicants appeared for 90 or 1,000 vacancies. Imagine if the government had to conduct that exam offline. 2.3 crores is more than the total population of Australia. It will take ages for them to even declare the result, and then wo jo ghotale or corruption. So a lot of students would approach the court, and the results will never be out. And we have seen this in many states. For instance, in Rajasthan, the RPSC result is still not out, right? एक स्टूडेंट जाता है, वो कोर्ट में एक एप्लीकेशन फाइल कर देता है कि मुझे लगता है कि इसमें तो चीटिंग हुई थी, इसमें से कुछ करप्शन हुआ था. So states have started adopting it. Now, if you look at our case, it is an irony and opportunity at the same time. Now, we are talking about students who are living in Bharat, because if you look at state government job exams, Vipin, almost 9 can appear for state government job. They come from Bharat, tier 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I from Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore would not like to become a constable and get posted to rural district or a place. So mostly they are coming from Bharat. These are mobile first internet users. Unfortunately, they've never seen a computer at home or school, right?
Yep.
And the state says to give the most important exam of your life, you have to sit in front of a computer and give a computer-based exam. Those poor chaps, they don't even know how to start a computer. Forget about giving a computer-based exam. So this irony is an opportunity for players like us, where whatever you see on a desktop or a laptop can be seen or done on this device. I think two large fundamental problems that all of us, and especially we are trying to solve, is the problem of accessibility and affordability of good. Just to add, I'll pick up from where Krishna left. I think earlier, education, a few large universities and top tier education institutions, they were the custodians of knowledge, right? We would go to Stanford and Harvard because cutting edge research was happening there. There were faculties who had immense experience, corporate experience, and they were sharing all of that. Today, thanks to edtech companies, I think both knowledge has been commoditized, and players like Simplilearn or Byju's or Pariksha, we are even democratizing it now. So at this stage, I think all of us are solving the problem of accessibility and affordability. And over a period of time, as Ashish said, that more focus will be on experience, and we are seeing the same trend here in Bharat.
Very interesting. So there is this breed of companies which is actually the education content and really in the business of training companies. And then there is this layer of companies that are coming as education SaaS companies. So there are companies which are providing technology for video hosting. There are companies that are providing content digitization services. There are companies that are providing test module hosting services. Obviously, their market is more niche, but do you see a wide space wherein you as a business owner still see some bit of space for some services yet to be catered and opportunity for entrepreneurs in the room to sort of try to target? Krishna, maybe you can help understand.
Yeah, Bipin. So I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities, right? Because it's a huge market, and large part of the market has still not come online, right? They still rely on traditional models of doing what has worked for like decades. And in EdTech, while there are players like Pariksha and Byju and Simplilearn, and there are many others who have reached a certain scale, there are all kinds of players. I think it all depends upon, as an entrepreneur, what is your aspiration. If you are, let's say, a great teacher and you want to reach out to more audience, and you are very happy teaching. You don't want to depend on investors' money. You love teaching. You want to get more audience, and you can go to internet and build a very niche brand. People will come to you. It's not that if Byju becomes popular, they will go. Everybody will go to Byju for IIT teaching. If you are some XYZ person, more instructor, you will also get audience, but you should be happy with what you are doing, right? Because that's a business. This is like you're a teacher, you're enjoying teaching it. So all kinds of a model exists. See, one big challenge that we see in EdTech, and it's a challenge, and I'm sure this challenge is there in any consumer business, is that the cost of acquiring paid users are very high. Frankly, as an EdTech founder, I really feel bad about it. That a good amount of money that learners pay goes towards acquiring customers. If somebody can solve this problem, then whatever you pay comes to you as a value. It doesn't go to a platform like Google or Facebook who take most of your money when you take their help in getting to the right audience. So that's definitely a challenge. So that's one challenge, and I'm sure somebody can build a platform wherein everything is free and very, very niche services only you go for a paid model. technology platform that you can give an example. See, technology obviously is a very difficult team to build, right? It's a huge demand supply gap. But somebody who's running a small business and only wants to cater to learners and doesn't want to take the complexity of managing a technology platform. And there are different kind of technology needs. So if somebody is building platform and providing to those kind of like instructors, all kinds of instructors, that's also a huge area. There are a couple of companies that have started, but my estimate is that we can have 10 large companies just enabling our instructors. And when we say instructor, we are not only talking about test prep and learning. There are all kinds of instructors. Like I attend every day morning fitness class on WhatsApp. I'm sure if there's a better way of doing it, right? And every day morning when I attend that WhatsApp class is done by one of my neighbor from a previous society that I know her very well, is that I don't know what is coming. Because technology platform, I could get some primer because sometimes I think that today it will be yoga and it ends up becoming very intense exercise and I'm looking at ways to get out of that class, right? So I'm sure a lot of things can be done. Like my son takes a keyboard class again on WhatsApp. I'm sure there can be better platforms for him to learn virtually. So huge opportunity on technology side. Niche player, absolutely. However amount of money large players raise, there will be taker for niche product, personalized services. And that has its own advantages and disadvantages. Plus, there are many areas that we have not thought of, right? Every time we think that, okay, we have thought about all problem and all kinds of companies exist. But then suddenly somebody comes with a new idea and shows that this itself has a huge potential. So I think one of the reasons why entrepreneurs end up becoming successful because they identify white spaces that nobody else is seeing. Only they can see and they are convinced about that and they go after that. Bipin, you are on mute.
Ashish, where do you see the opportunity as a business owner when you seek some services for yourself?
See, there are n number of things which are already known for digital. Suppose we are talking about the marketing or we are talking about the SEO, we are talking about the tech team. These are already digital and the mentality of the people looking towards is digital. But since now education is going towards digital or the edtech is moving towards digital, there is one big thing. First and the foremost is creating faculties. The faculties which are required from a digital perspective are totally different from the faculties which are there in offline. The knowledge base is the same, but to present it in a better manner, to present it in a manner that it is easily consumable, or to interact with the students on a digital platform is totally different than interacting in a high-touch classroom. I have taken classes personally having 600, 700 students in a single class, teaching them rotational mechanics, talking about moment of inertia, rotational energy and all that stuff. But that can be done in a much, much better manner in a digital. Because here we have tools to do so. We can showcase them where is moment of inertia, which point are we talking about. And it's not only about visualization, it's about the structure also, how we can change that. The way in which the teachers behave, the way in which the teachers speak, the way in which the teachers present, that is one scope where there is a lot of immense potential and nobody is looking at it. Because these faculties needs to come online, they have to become digital. And these are those ones who haven't seen digital in their lifespan or haven't given a digital exam.
Yeah.
They have been through an offline exam. They have their experience of an offline exam. They have their mentality of an offline exam. Now they need to be trained or retrained back again and make it so that the digital becomes comfortable for them. Or there are n number of content creators required nowadays. Because there is no limit to the imagination or innovation which could be possibly be done over here. So n number of content creating companies can grow, which can become unicorns or bigger than those, which can support to large edtech companies for the content. And there is a consistent requirement for content every time. So these are two possibilities. Then there is a large requirement of a possibility of a trained SMEs. Because there are presenters, there are SMEs. The SMEs don't know how to respond to a question, when to respond to a question, what to respond to a question. Because what SMEs are currently in the system are those which have been there in the offline. Now they have come to an online space altogether. So they are not very comfortable. Then you have to create tools which make them comfortable with the whole system. When the educators and the SMEs become comfortable to the system, then only the gap can be bridged up. So there is a requirement for such type of a tools which can easily bridge those gaps.
Got it.
You have two equations which can be solved. Those are differential equations with 2 variables, 3 variables. So there are no tools which can easily make them available to these educators who can showcase them to a student, how to use them, what implication of theirs are there, which
Yep. Makes sense.
all these things can be created. So there is
Yeah.
a number of scope, not only from a tech front
Yeah,
or
yeah.
from a digital front, but from an education academic perspective altogether.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are still learning. Then there is a requirement for a different type of an assessment analysis also.
Yeah. Of course.
Because to identify the gap, you need to do an analysis on various levels. It's
Yeah.
not only which is right, which is wrong by topic or subtopic, but you also have to study the behavior of a student.
Yeah.
You have to study the nature of the student. You have to study the pattern of the student in which the student is behaving.
Hmm.
And you have to create the learning maps of the student, that where are the gaps and how EdTech can fill those gaps.
Yep. Yep.
Because EdTech will be successful only when it can be customized to an individual level,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you can fill those gaps using that.
Sure.
So there could be n number of tools which can be created for those.
Yep. Karan, since you're dealing with India, Bharat, and so many different languages, do you rely on technology services to do the translation? Is it manual? How do you do all of that?
Yeah, so when we started Vipin, it was all manual.
Okay.
But gradually we are building systems where in the translation, at least of the textual content can happen in real time in different languages. Just to add to what Ashish has said, I think apart from this, very few companies have been able to leverage on the strength of these devices. For instance, very few companies across the globe, they've been effectively able to use camera, the power of camera, right? Today, to deliver a very personalized experience, this camera can play a very big role. It can capture the emotions, whether a student is agreeing to a certain statement or not agreeing, whether he's interested, not interested, attentive, not attentive. A lot of insights can be gauged with the help of the camera. So one thing that we are also working, which is again at a elementary stage, is how effectively do we use this camera to impart a very personalized experience that Ashish was talking about. You're on mute, Vipin.
Please switch. Okay. So very interesting. Is there a way wherein you see some bit of consolidation already happening in the EdTech ecosystem right now? Because there is so much buzz over the last 2 years, especially. Do you already start seeing some patterns of consolidation in the industry now?
So I think, yeah, please, Ashish, go ahead.
Then go on.
No, he's a bigger player. They are in the
It doesn't matter. Ashish, but go on.
Right.
So I think if you look at India, we have over 4,500 companies. So not all of them will make a mark. And acquisition has happened in the past, and I think the pace of acquisition will grow. So companies, giants like, let's say, Byju's, or bigger players like Unacademy, if they have to add a couple of more $1 billion to their valuation, they'll have to look at new segments, and that's where players like smaller players who are solving a niche problem will come into play. So I think more acquisitions will happen, and this industry will get consolidated. We'll have 7 to 8 large players after that.
Adding to the point which Karan has mentioned, it's too early to say consolidation has even started yet.
Yes.
Acquisitions will happen, but still we can see now there is still a decade to be passed by before the consolidation is happening. We can say that confidently, and the numbers can also represent that. So still there is a decade available where new companies can come up, innovate, can create their mark, and then we can see that consolidation would happen. India is a very monopolistic market. If you see,
Yeah.
on a capital market, if you see, 80% of the Indian profits are being made by the top 20 companies in this country, top 20 listed companies in this country.
Yeah.
It's a monopolistic market.
Yeah.
Nestle is very monopolistic in the baby food segment, or you can say Asian Paints is very monopolistic in the paint segment. So India is a monopolistic market. So if there could be a possibility, but it could be a decade or at least 2 decades away at present. So there is a huge scope for everyone to grow in this country.
Yep.
There could be n number of unicorns in the EdTech space. But there will be, as Karan has mentioned, acquisitions will keep on happening. There will be a scope for niche companies to grow, create them, make a mark in the segment.
Got it. Krishna, coming to you, because you've been at it, Simplilearn, you already have an international story. You're also here in India. Do you foresee an IPO for your venture in the coming 1 to 2 years? What is your plan like for it?
So Vipin, I'll not put a timeline, but I agree with what Ashish and Karan are saying, that this is a new market. The market is expanding. We don't know how big this market will become because it's still very, very early, right? In spite of all the success these companies like Values have seen, it's still 1 or 2% of the total population that's paying.
Agreed.
So we don't know. So for sure, consolidation will happen, and some of the players who have a lot of money, they'll try to acquire like competency that they don't have, and they think that they can easily acquire those competency rather than spending years in building that. So all that will keep happening. You also see a lot of IPO happening for sure. So right now, the IPO market is all-time best. So obviously,
Yes.
every company would like to do an IPO in the current market, but we'll see. I think in next 5 years, we'll see a lot of Indian startups, not necessarily EdTech, but in general Indian startup tapping capital market to raise money, where you get the best kind of valuations, you get the best terms, and EdTech companies will also follow. See, relatively, you look at EdTech is a new phenomenon. Was where EdTech is today, maybe few years back. So I'm not surprised. I think all kinds of options companies will use to raise money, right?
Okay. Given that we are now discussing with respect to the audience here, which is also from IIT Kanpur. So IIT Kanpur obviously still remains largely traditional in that sense, institution with an offline, huge campus, etc. How do you see collaborations from your different viewpoints coming to IIT Kanpur? As a member of Alumni Association, I'm just sort of putting out this question, given that we have an audience from IIT also sitting here with us. So,
I believe because you're already working with IIT.
Yeah, of course. You are already there, Krishna. Yeah.
See, IIT Kanpur, I'll say among all the IITs has been like very, very pragmatic in their approach. Right? I think there are a lot of IITs who are still thinking about whether they should partner with EdTech players or not, whether they should do something or not. But I was very, very pleasantly surprised that IIT Kanpur is already making a lot of efforts. They have a program with us. They have programs with some of our competitors also in different areas, and they are open to do more such program because they think that short skilling course is something that it doesn't make sense to do on premise on in-person classes, right? These are the skills that can be easily taught online, and they can cater to a much wider audience, not only in India but even people outside India also. So I see them already making a lot of steps. In fact, another thing that I find it very, very good with IIT Kanpur is that the new director is very, very active on social media, right? So he's like always provides update on what's happening, and so those are all very good things. So compared to any other traditional IIT, I think IIT Kanpur is more, I'll say, new age, more open to trying out new things.
So in our case, Vipin, I think we're very, very fortunate. Two of my co-founders are from IIT Kanpur. In fact, very happy to share that my first user was IIT Kanpur. When students are in the 4th year, they sit for these campus placements, right? And nowadays, when companies they come onto campus, they take online aptitude test and online programming test, where Krishna probably has expertise. So unfortunately, education institutions, including IITs, they did not have any platform that they could give students to prepare for online aptitude test or online programming test. So that's where we received a request. Very happy that IIT Kanpur became our first user, and then through word of mouth. So today, our another business using the same platform is that there are 280 colleges, including almost all the old IITs, whether it is IIT Madras or IIT Bombay. They're still using Pariksha's platform to help the students prepare for online aptitude test and online programming test. So they upload their own content and they give access to their students. So this is offered for free to all the education institutions today. But so we also have some relationship with IIT.
At present, for us, it's too difficult to have a partnership with IIT. But looking forward, we are very, very open for that. I have seen those days, something around in 2008, 2010, when I was there in Resonance. We are looking forward to going for a faculty training program, and we know best of the minds are there in IITs. So we have approached various IITs, and IIT Kanpur was one of them who have simply rejected that you can't recruit our guys for being faculties and teaching the other kids. So from that, opening up to a relationship which Krishna and Karan are mentioning, it's very, very glad to see those type of a relationship. But going forward, what we have looked forward to is there could be collaborations. We have been seeing collaborations with various other institutions like Cornell, because there are a couple of professors who can help us in various other tech parts. Something like AI and ML, they are supporting us, though they are also alums of IIT Kanpur only, but they are open and collaborating. So going forward, definitely there could be a lot of collaboration which can happen.
Got
And
it.
looking forward to that collaboration.
Great. I think this was a good panel discussion. We'll follow this with a quick discussion in a separate room with the students, who will then start asking the panelists question on a one-on-one basis. But I'll end this panel discussion with a brief thank you for everyone in the panel right now for spending your time. And we'll just sort of move to the next panel and allow them to take the stage right now. Thanks again. And I'll share the link